Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. An exhibit featuring Palestinian artist Samia Halaby is happening this weekend, just not on the Indiana University campus as planned.
This is the event for people who want to understand what we are missing.
Ahead, we'll talk with an IU professor about the university's decision to cancel the exhibit. A new Miss Indiana University will be crowned this weekend. We look at the history of the pageant and what to expect this year.
My ideal Miss IU would be someone that is humble, someone that is always willing to volunteer, and someone that really shows what it means to be a Hoosier.
The winner earns a spot in the Miss Indiana pageant. And legislators are discussing ways to increase voting security in Indiana heading into this year's general elections. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. The life and work of one of Palestine's foremost artists will be featured this weekend in an event in downtown Bloomington a week after it was supposed to debut on the Indiana University campus. It's one more way organizers are protesting IU's cancellation of the artist's long-planned event. Aubrey Wright has more.
The sold-out show, Samia Halaby Uncancelled, will premiere Saturday at the Buskirk-Chumley Theater. Halaby's family fled Palestine in 1948 and settled in the Midwest. She completed a master's in fine arts at Indiana University in the 60s and later served as a faculty member. She's recognized as a pioneer of abstract art and one of the university's most successful artists. She's in her late 80s now.
Indiana was different for me. Indiana was a very social place. It was a pleasure to be in Bloomington compared to New Haven.
Halaby's team and museum curators prepared her homecoming show for 3 years. The exhibit was supposed to open February 10th, but it was abruptly canceled in December. In a 2-sentence email, the museum director said it was because of security concerns. Halaby's grandniece and collaborator, Madison Gordon, said they tried to learn more from the university for weeks before making the cancellation public in January with a petition.
Asked to have a conversation. We asked for them to elaborate more in writing what this was about. We heard nothing.
IU never responded to Halaby, and it made no announcement of the cancellation. In later interviews, Halaby says this exhibit was supposed to show her love for the Midwest, but she feels like she doesn't have a home here anymore. IU Provost Rahul Srivastav is the only university leader to speak publicly about the cancellation. He says the art would have been a lightning rod for protests on campus, and IU's leaders were being cautious.
Anytime where you feel the risks are higher than the reward, we have to rethink that situation.
Outrage is spreading on campus.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Shame on Britain! Shame on Britain!
Last Friday, faculty members, historians, and artists spoke at a teach-in protest on campus, attended by more than 100 people. Featured speakers talked about academic freedoms since the Israel-Hamas war began. They say this kind of censorship doesn't align with IU's history or mission.
I've learned that I have been very, very naive about the state of academic freedom on this campus.
Lichtenstein says canceling a world-renowned artists' exhibition has damaged IU's reputation.
IU is going to be the laughingstock, I would say, of the art world.
IU stands by its decision to cancel the exhibit, so Professor Elizabeth Hausworth created one herself. She organized Saturday's Samia Halaby Uncanceled with support from Halaby's studio, private donors, and a dent in her own wallet.
This is the event for people who want to understand what we are missing.
The show will dive into Halaby's life, activism, and work. Houseworth says IU is silencing a Palestinian voice when it's needed most. Like many others, she was deeply troubled by the university's vague explanation.
It seemed like we were canceling one side of the issue, and I felt it was wrong.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Aubrey Wright.
IU has forwarded Halaby's artwork to Michigan State University for an exhibit there in June. Halaby earned her bachelor's degree in East Lansing. Well, we're joined now by Leslie Lenkowski, a professor emeritus in IU School of Public and Environmental Affairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So the university cited security concerns. I don't know that we really know what that means. Can you give us a little bit more info on what you think they mean? And is this happening elsewhere?
Yes, it is happening elsewhere. For the past few months, museums and other institutions all around the world have been concerned about essentially pro-Palestinian demonstrations disrupting their activities or even causing destruction. Just last Monday, the Museum of Modern Art in New York City was closed down because of a pro-Palestinian protest. It wasn't directed against any of the artwork. It was directed against trustees of the museum who were thought to be too pro-Israel. Here at IU, the Eskenazi family, which underwrote the museum, is a prominent Jewish family in Indianapolis, been very generous to IU. So I have no first-hand information, but I would not be surprised to know that there were real concerns about security here as there have been elsewhere.
So the pushback against the cancellation claims the university is stifling academic freedom. Where's that balance between academic freedom and free speech?
Well, we also, in addition to protecting freedom of speech and academic freedom, IU also insists on a code of responsibilities and civility for behavior by both students and faculty, and the provisions of that code prohibit certain kinds of conduct that's harassing, including emails, publications, and so on. It is a balancing act. Clearly, the administration has struck a particular balance in this instance. It might not do it in other instances. We also don't know what it is that the IU security people may know, whether they had any information about things being planned. You don't have to look too hard on campus these days to see that security has been ramped up substantially, and that may be the case here too.
You know, IU has also faced accusations from the State House, Jim Banks, one of them, that IU is not doing enough to address anti-Semitism on campus. So what more could IU do?
Well, in 2018, Indiana University adopted a widely used definition of anti-Semitism that would, among other things, prescribe some of what we have been seeing chalked or on bridges or elsewhere on campus. IU needs to enforce that rule, which was affirmed by President Whitten in 2022. IU also has a faculty task force on anti-Semitism that reports to the provost, and the provost needs to convene that regularly and solicit its advice.
Thank you so much for coming in today. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We're joined now by Callie Lichter for more headlines from around the state. Hi, Callie.
Hi, Joe. Monroe County Council members have unanimously approved a revised draft interlocal agreement for the County Convention Center expansion. A section from the previous draft with specific requirements for appointments to a commission overseeing innkeepers' tax revenues has been removed. Indiana Code already outlines how those appointments must be made. The document must be approved by the mayor, city council, and the commissioners. The Indiana Center for Recovery wants to build 2 group homes west of downtown Bloomington, but city officials say the plan does not align with its housing goals. The center wants a rezone from residential use to mixed-use health care. The homes would be on the north and south sides of West 1st Street near Walker Street.
There's no other mixed-use healthcare adjacent to this. In fact, there is no mixed-use healthcare at all on the zoning maps.
City Council members Isabel Piedmont Smith and Hopi Strasburg also spoke against the request, citing concerns about neighborhood integrity and proximity to a planned site for mixed-income housing. Monroe County has a new election supervisor, again. Kylie Moreland started her job in the new role Monday, less than a month after the local League of Women's Voters expressed concern about the upcoming election because the position was vacant. She's the county's third election supervisor since longtime supervisor Karen Wheeler resigned at the start of 2023. A League spokesperson says the hire addresses their immediate concerns, but that it's important to have lasting replacements with institutional knowledge.
Understanding how these pieces fit together, having that institutional knowledge is going to be key to being as effective and efficient as possible.
Also, Laura Wirt was named the county's new chief deputy clerk. That position has been empty since July 2023. Getting more young Hoosiers to the polls this election season is a goal of the Indiana Civil Health Index. In 2022, Indiana ranked last in voter registration and turnout for ages 18 to 19 years old. How to get them involved is the question.
Actually going out and finding people and talking to them and connecting them to organizations and opportunities to get involved is more fruitful in the long run.
Bagetta also suggests talking with students in schools about the issues that are important to them. A recent report by the Index called for increasing turnout for 18 to 24-year-old Hoosiers. 3 new paintings, all by Black artists, are now hanging in the Indiana Memorial Union. The paintings, selected by students, are part of the building's commitment to reflect the student body through its art collection.
The IMU is the heart of campus. It's supposed to feel like home. And seeing more diversity in the art displayed on our walls will help more students feel at home here.
A group of students selected the pieces from the Butter Art Fair in Indianapolis in September. The Union Board plans to continue adding diverse artworks to the collection. Fredrickson says the next project will involve Latino artwork, which is not currently in the building. Vigo County will pay $100,000 to the state of a man who died in jail from COVID-19. Frederick Whitlock was an inmate at the former Vigo County Jail in 2020 when he died. Whitlock's daughter sued Sheriff John Plassey and jail staff. She alleged they failed to provide adequate medical care. The parties reached a settlement last month. Court documents say that Plassey had said there was no COVID in the jail before Whitlock's death, despite not having tested inmates. After Whitlock's death, a majority of inmates tested positive for COVID. Indiana remains a top agricultural state with ag products valued at over $18 billion, according to the agricultural census data taken every 5 years by the USDA. That's a 64% increase in value of ag products since the last census in 2018. The state has more than 53,000 farms, taking up a total of more than 14 million acres of land. The average Hoosier farmer is a 56-year-old male working on 272 acres. And Joe, did you know that Indiana is the #1 producer of popcorn, gourds, and duck in the nation?
I knew popcorn, but not the others.
I also knew popcorn, but everything else was a surprise.
Thanks, Callie. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. A new Miss Indiana University will be crowned this week, and we take a look back at pageants past and what's in store this year. And legislators at the Indiana State House are debating voting security measures ahead of this year's general election. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk. WTIU Television and WFIU Radio help to make up the largest public news bureau in the state, focusing in on the stories and events that you need to stay informed. Our news team works together to bring local and national content on the topics you want and need. Constantly recognized as one of the best public news sources in Indiana, we strive to provide the news in order to stay informed and understand the world around you. Join us on Indiana Newsdesk, your top source for the latest in-depth local and national news.
Are you nervous?
A little. And action! Right things ahead, darling. Brightness and joy.
I've got plans. Everything feels better after a cup of tea.
Now talking.
I just want to be right here in this moment with you.
You're going to be a bigger star than ever.
This is good news for all of us.
Best episode ever.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Lawmakers are plowing ahead at the State House with less than a month remaining in this year's session. One bill discussed in a Senate committee this week would make it easier to purge voter rolls. But election officials and voter advocates have several issues with the legislation, including privacy concerns, potential lawsuits, and voter suppression. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith has this story.
The bill provides more ways to try and remove people from voter rolls. Proponents say it's an effort to further secure Indiana's elections. That includes requiring the state to compare voter registration to Bureau of Motor Vehicles data on credentials given to non-citizens. People flagged by that comparison would have to show proof of citizenship to their county election officials within 30 days in order to vote. Critics say that's simply not long enough.
Currently in Indianapolis, I just looked it up, an average of 7 months in order to obtain a certificate of citizenship.
And BMV data is also often out of date.
We will have to deal with the issue on Election Day when voters are erroneously canceled because of the bad data, and our poll workers will struggle to properly assist the voters and could unintentionally turn people away.
Another proposal would allow the state to buy voters' credit information from companies like Experian. It would then compare that information to the voter rolls in an effort to identify people who don't live where their voter registration says they do. One small-town resident says that is a gross violation of his privacy rights.
Does any of you know how many stores there are in Wilbur, Indiana, where I can purchase groceries or gas? 0. So who gets to decide if I'm spending enough money in Wilbur to retain my status as a voter?
The Senate committee is expected to consider amendments to the bill and vote on it next week. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith.
The House Committee on Education heard over 3 hours of testimony Wednesday on a bill that would change Indiana's tenure rules and put trustees appointed by the legislature on university boards. Senate Bill 202 allows trustees to revoke tenure to faculty who failed to teach, quote, diverse viewpoints in their classrooms. Senator Spencer Deary, the bill's author, says it's not an attack on tenure and pointed to a clause that he says would protect professors for views expressed outside the classroom.
That is a big deal for tenured faculty in Indiana. And anybody who favors and understands the reasons why we have tenure should be supportive of that and celebrate that change.
Dozens of faculty, students, and officials from Indiana's public universities took to the podium to disagree.
In the People's Republic of China, educators long ago lost their independence to political boards, and the result was brain drain.
The committee postponed its vote on the bill, meaning it could die there. As Indiana University identifies as a tobacco-free university, the use and sale of tobacco products and smoking-related products are prohibited on campus. But even with this policy is in place, it's not easy to enforce. Isabella Vesperini has this report.
IU's tobacco-free policy relies on community members for enforcement. The university expects people on campus to ask those who are vaping or smoking to stop, similar to when masks were mandated during the pandemic. But this method is not foolproof. Vaping is a particular problem. It can be very discreet and people can get away with it, which makes it even harder to strictly regulate.
We want people to have a sense, this is their place and this is their home and they're welcome here. And I don't think we want them to feel like, we're monitoring every single thing that they do.
A professor from the IU School of Public Health recently conducted a study on stealth vaping, the act of discreet vaping, especially when rules prohibit it, at 4 universities, including IU. Results showed students who had friends who were more accepting of stealth vaping were more likely to stealth vape themselves. Conversely, those who had peers who did not vape on campus were also less likely to vape on campus. The study also found students get away with vaping in bathrooms, dorm rooms, and libraries. Students were most likely to blow the smoke into their clothing or swallow it. Regulation in residence halls is stricter because there's a larger staff to look out for people vaping and smoking.
you're not going to get kicked out of the residence hall if you're seeing baby one time kind of thing. There's going to be a progression and hopefully an educational conversation about the impact that has on the community and the health of others.
IU Collegiate Recovery Community Coordinator Samantha Ritz says it is important to educate college students on the myths about vaping in the effort to help them understand why it is harmful. Nicotine, which is present in almost all vapes, can be especially harmful to a young brain, which continues to develop until around the age of 25.
We acknowledge that they're here for their academics, but they also are experiencing a lot of other things while they're here, and so how can we support you in what you want? And if you want to stop vaping or cut back or find an alternative or something like that, then let's absolutely support you and help you do that.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Isabella Fesperini.
A new Miss Indiana University will be crowned Sunday. The university's scholarship pageant has a long and colorful history on campus. Aubrey Wright explores the competition and what to expect for this year's pageant.
Before Caitlin Ross was crowned Miss Indiana University last year, she conducted a science experiment. Wearing a lab coat and safety goggles, Ross used her 90 seconds on stage to show the audience how fireflies glow.
So I basically make giant glow sticks on stage.
As a freshman, a mentor told her she wasn't cut out for science. But as Miss IU, she is advocating for the next generation of feminists in STEM. She was a finalist for the Miss Indiana STEM Award, and she says she's seeing young girls blossom into scientists while helping out with a local Girl Scout group.
It's so cliche to say, but I think it's really changed my life in a lot of ways. It's given me so much confidence in public speaking and being an advocate.
This year, 14 contestants will compete for scholarships and a chance to go on to Miss Indiana and maybe Miss America. The event is free at Wilkie Auditorium, but attendees are encouraged to bring donations for the Crimson Cupboard. Senior Hannah Oschlager is leading the show. Unlike other local pageants that feed into Miss Indiana, Miss IU is run by students. Contestants will go over their community service initiatives, which are platforms to show their values and beliefs. Then there's the talent section. Oschlager says this can be anything, like martial arts, coding, dancing, and of course, Ross's science experiment.
It's really important that the contestant chooses something that just shows their creativity and a little bit of their personality.
Contestants will still wear their best gowns as part of the show, but there will definitely be no swimsuits. This year, the pageant is partnering with the American Heart Association for a fitness section.
So fitness is really just how the contestants can describe how they're Miss America fit.
Oschlager says she's heard the stereotypes about pageants, but this competition isn't about beauty and pretty dresses. Miss IU needs to be well-spoken and represent the university well.
My ideal Miss IU would be someone that is humble, someone that is always willing to volunteer, and someone that really shows what it means to be a Hoosier.
Teresa White's been involved with the pageant since 2006.
This is Claudia, right here in the pink. Claudia was Miss IU in 2019.
White describes these women's success. Some have gone on to win Miss Indiana, others moved across the country for their careers or to prestigious schools. Many still give back to the pageant today.
So these are pretty amazing people.
The pageant has changed a lot over the years. White says the pageant began in the 1940s, and the beauty queens were typically honored in the university's yearbook. In 1959, then sophomore Nancy Streets broke the race barrier, becoming the first black woman to compete and the first black woman to win.
I think they saw her as like a good talent and a good face, and she's very spunky still to this day.
Streets made national news for her accomplishment, but along with praise, she faced significant racism. She was not included in the yearbook like other Miss IU winners, but she was invited back and honored in 2013. Streets hadn't been on campus since she graduated.
Here's Nancy Streets with Justice, who was 1959, 2016.
After protests and feminist movements in the 60s, Miss IU went on hiatus. It was brought back in 2006 by former executive director Lindsay Ships. White says contestants' scores are mostly based on interviewing and speaking skills. Most women won't win, but many build their confidence, improve in public speaking, and get better at performing.
A lot of people call it a beauty pageant. It's nowhere near a beauty pageant. Hasn't been for years.
Now, in her first year of law school, Ross's time as Miss IU is coming to an end. She'll be there Sunday to crown the next winner.
I think it's easy for women to shy away from talking about themselves. And pageant has really, my experience in pageants has really taught me how to really speak about what I've done and know that brings value.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Aubrey Wright.
And restoration of the 165-foot brick tower in downtown Columbus is now complete. More than 50 feet of brick on the east and west faces of the tower connected to the 82-year-old First Christian Church, along with the veneer on the north and south bases, were replaced.
There really are very few equivalent buildings to this in the country. And so there's no real benchmark. This building's unusual in that it's all brick. It's incredibly tall.
The tower restoration cost more than $2 million. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.